Mr. White?
Chairman McKee and members of the Board of Zoning Appeals, my name is Tom White, along with my law partner George Dean, to represent the applicant in this case. At the outset, I wanted to confirm that Mr. Joyner, the planner, has confirmed that some items that will be agreed to are the land use plan, number 1, the zoning ordinance, number 2, and the 2035 general plan. Mr. Joyner has those things and have given them to the staff. I'd also comment at the front end that we originally filed this application and were to be heard at the June 9 meeting. It was suggested that we should consider having a town hall meeting, which we did in this room on June 20, and did a presentation which basically showed in detail the items that are part of the package which is before you today. Based upon that, we voluntarily agreed to back the hearing off from June 20 until tonight's hearing. This is a request for a conditional use permit. I know the members of this board are familiar with those types of requests. This is for a quarry as a principal use and an asphalt and concrete plant as accessory uses. This board knows that quarries are lawful uses in Tennessee, they're lawful uses in Sumner County. We have a somewhat unusual circumstance here in that the county has a land use classification system, which, as I've referenced, is something that's already in the record by agreement, which identifies certain uses. The first item that's in your packet, which has been handed to you, is a letter from our law firm spelling out the request that we've made tonight and the legal reason why we feel that we're entitled to it. The next item is the land use classification system, and if you look at that document under the county's land use systems document, on the second page, paragraph 5, it recognized for agricultural, resource production, and extractive activities, and specifically designates a mining and quarrying operation, which is what my client has made application for in this matter. The key, as I'll just mention, under the document we've identified is the county land use classification system. So it's the use that is the key before this board tonight with respect to the proposal. Again, it's the land use issue, it's agricultural, it's mining and quarrying. Now, the other item which I've mentioned to you previously has to do with the actual use on the property itself. I've mentioned the principal use, which is the quarry. I've mentioned the ancillary uses or secondary, which are the specific asphalt and concrete operations. I think it's important that the members of this board consider a Tennessee code section, which is again in your package. It is 13.3.304. This is a recent enactment by the Tennessee General Assembly. It's effective July 1st of this year. This legislative piece is extremely clear. It says, if the legislative body adopts the general regional plan in the form of a resolution by the county, and there's no dispute that has been done here, it's part of the same package. The Planning Commission approved your general plan in June of 2010, and the legislative body adopted it in September of 2010. But again, to the most recent legislation, if the legislative body adopts the general plan, then any land use decisions, and the key is any land use decisions made by a Board of Zoning Appeals when the Board of Zoning Appeals is exercising its power on matters other than variances, this is clearly a matter other than variance, the conditional use permit, quote, it must be consistent with the general regional plan. So any decision which this Board of Zoning Appeals makes tonight must mandatorily be consistent with your land use plan. The land use plan is what I referenced initially. Your land use classification shows for agricultural and the area where this proposed operation is for the most part in the rural-agricultural area. We're committing to the board tonight that one of the conditions that we have agreed to is that all of the buildings on the property, all the buildings on the property will be in the rural area. And that is a significant part of the property. We can handle those very simply, but we're making as a commitment, a condition, that all of the buildings will be in the rural agricultural area. In our opinion, that clearly would mandate that this board would approve the use based upon reasonable conditions. But again, the key from this most recently enacted legislation is that it is the use that's key, and this board mandatorily must take actions that are consistent with the use. It does not identify board's action consistent with the base zoning, and I think the members of this board realize under your county zoning ordinance, there is not a base zoning requirement for a quarry operation. And in a lot of jurisdictions, you have a requirement where there has to be a commercial, an agricultural, perhaps an industrial zoning for a quarry. You don't have anything like that in Sumner County. What you've got is a land use plan. The land use plan clearly allows mining and quarrying, our requested activity, in agricultural use. Your 2035 plan, which is part of what has been made an exhibit here by agreement, the 2035 plan shows the bulk of this property in rural/agricultural. And again, all of the buildings in our proposal will be in that rural/agricultural use. The general plan was adopted, as I said, by the Planning Commission in June of 2010, by the legislative body in September of 2010. Again, that's a document that's before you, and without reference to the specifics, I don't think there's any issue but that the bulk of this property is in the, quote, the rural/agricultural part of that zone use. Now, the client in this case has agreed that although there's not a legal requirement, they would do a pre-blast survey on all structures within 1,000 feet of the quarry pit. We think that's 14, it could be up to 20. We think 14 is accurate. We would commit to do that at my client's expense. In addition, we would do at my client's expense a pre-blast survey on all historic buildings. We know of 2, we've identified them. There's others that have been raised. If this commission determines that there are other historic buildings that should be subject to a pre-blast survey, my client will pay for that at our expense. That's for the protection of those properties, it's for the protection of my client. The other issue that's often comes up with a quarry is whether a site is sparsely populated and likely to remain so. One of the exhibits which is in your package is a letter from a planner, and it has a Google Earth map. That Google Earth map shows that with respect to this site, it identifies a 31.33 square mile area. That area has a population of 1,819 people. That is 58 people per square mile. This is based on the 2010 federal census. The 2011 is not officially up and available. But 58 people per square mile, I think, meets any definition of sparsely populated and likely to remain so. That's not a requirement under your ordinance, but we wanted to indicate the low population in the area. When we filed this application, which was done with Mr. Joyner as the planner, I contacted the county executive, Mr. Anthony Holt, who's here tonight. I didn't meet him until tonight. I told him that we were filing this. He thanked me for giving him the heads up. I told him I wanted to send a letter to him about the economic impacts of this operation. That letter is also an exhibit in your packet. That includes an investment of approximately $15 million. It includes 120 to 135 full-time employees, none of whom are minimum wage. It has an identification of a $5 million annual payroll. It has real property taxes in the $30,000 to $40,000 range, which clearly will be set by the county body, but that's our estimate. And the local sales tax will be in the range of $375,000 to $500,000 a year. Now, with respect to a conditional use permit for a quarry, the county in their zoning ordinance has no conditions. And in most jurisdictions that we deal with, there are conditions that are incidental to a quarry application. They deal with site contours, they deal with hours of operation. Because there are none in your zoning ordinance, we basically grafted one from other jurisdictions which we think are clearly reasonable and sensible. We're asking for those to be imposed. If there are other reasonable conditions that should be imposed by this board, that is your call. We would agree to all reasonable and sensible conditions. The last item which I'll mention tonight is there's a letter in your packet from the Greater Nashville Regional Council. This is the, if you will, the state zoning authorities, and apparently a request was made to them with respect to the application that's before this board tonight, and a copy was sent to all the lawyers by Leah Dennon, the county attorney. In this letter, the author of the letter first identifies the new Tennessee Code section, which I said to you, which says, whatever you do, your action mandatorily has to be consistent with the use as set out here. It can't be inconsistent with that. The use for the bulk of this site is agricultural/rural, and clearly not to allow the quarry would be inconsistent with the land use plan as mandated by that Tennessee Code section. At the bottom of the letter from the author, it says, "The first step I would undertake would be to review the general plan adopted by the Planning Commission and the county legislative body." That's before you. I've said it too many times. The general plan clearly designates the area where this property is for rural-agricultural. The second thing, which is mentioned by the author, is that the second step would be to check what other uses are allowed within this area. The zoning ordinance, which is R1A for this area, the zoning ordinance specifies that, among other things, you can allow municipal, county, state, and federal uses. That's how wide open the categories are, even under the zoning category. But the zoning category is not what drives this application tonight. The issue which drives the application tonight is the land use for this area, which is until 2035 rural and agricultural, and clearly your mandate is to act consistently with that. We have a few other speakers who will stay and answer whatever questions. Thank you for your courtesies, Mr. Chairman. John?
Hello, my name is John Gordon. I'm the project engineer for this project, and I've been asked to speak on two items and also give a quick explanation of the site plans which were submitted as a part of the packet. The first thing is, I believe at the back of the folder that was handed out a few moments ago, there are some photos that are from our presentation at the public meeting a couple of weeks ago, and one of those issues that I'm going to discuss is a compatible use issue, and this is an example of a location where quarry activities have been a compatible use, and that's in Hermitage, Tennessee. This site is on the east side of Nashville by Central Pike and Old Hickory Boulevard, and the photos in the back of the packet, there's several by date of aerial photos of the site. And the first one is 1975, and the site is outlined in the center of that. Do you guys have that? In the 1975 photo, you can see the site for the quarry outlined, and there are some areas of development around that site. Then moving forward in time to 1987, there's new development. Moving forward to 1987, there's new development to the southeast of the site. I turned it off.
Go back to August.
Again, I'm John Gordon, project engineer for the site. Looking in the photos that you have in the packet, starting in 1975 in Hermitage, there's the quarry site outlined in the center of that site, and there is some development activity around that. But as you go forward in time through to the 1987 aerial photo, there's additional development to the southeast and east for that property. And then by the time we reach 1999, looking there, you can see Summit Medical Center has been built, and also additional residential sites around the quarry area. And then by 2010, there are even more additional sites as outlined in blue, including some metro government buildings and the Hermitage Recreation Center, which are the closest development to the quarry site, which were built between that 1999 and 2010 time frame.